I'm here with Giovanni Folonari. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us.
Well, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Great.
You're certainly well known. Folonari is a very important brand in the U.S., but you're also the owner of many properties. These are properties throughout Tuscany. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how Folonari started in Tuscany and the direction that they're going today.
Oh, that's a tough question because you said little bit.
A little bit.
This is going to take forever.
All right, well, we'll see where it takes us.
I'll try to make it short. As you said, my family, the Folonari family, has been related to wines. And I'm in the 8th generation, so we've been around there for a while, and we always made wine for living, which is very important, you know. I think you need a lot of passion, a lot of sacrifice, especially in the tougher vintages. Until 40 years ago, we used to own a winery with our own name related, which is Folonari. Then my grandfather sold the winery in the mid-60s. Because he wanted to concentrate more on higher-end wine, so more than beverage, he wanted to go to and move into the fine wine category. Also because people were starting to drink less, but they wanted to drink better, more specific, more unique, more complex wines. So at the time, we also had another winery that my great-grandfather bought in 1913, which was Ruffino. So the idea of my parents was to focus on Ruffino for the bigger volumes, that was already at a higher level, entry-level fine wines, high-level beverage wines, and start to invest in these so-called estates. So he bought the Cabreo property in 1967, he bought Nozzole in 1971, so the idea was to have a big winery that was making, you know, interesting wines, and then at the same time high-end crus coming from our own vineyards in these estates. Then, as you probably know, the problem that we have with the family business is that every generation the family members increase in number.
Sure.
And of course you don't have...
You have to buy another estate.
Bravo, either that or have somebody that can... The problem is you cannot actually have somebody can be the judge and say, okay, you're good for this, you're good for that, you're not good for this, you're not good for that. So you have the same last name, you have the same rights. And so if you want to get along when you're so many, even if you buy more properties, it's going to take forever to take a decision, strategic decision, because you want to have everybody favorable. So by the time you convince somebody, things move on forward, and so for this reason we thought that we had to come to an end, and in 2000 my father's generation split up, and we left the Ruffino operation to the rest of the family, and me and my father, part of the family also was just left, and me and my father wanted to concentrate more on the estate wines. So from that division we started focusing exclusively on wines, estate bottled, wines coming from an origin, from a land, from a vineyard. So we took Nozzole, we took Cabreo, we took the property we have in Montepulciano that is called Gracciano, where we make a Vino Nobile. And then we took the Spalletti, which is a brand that we used to make Chianti, or entry-level, younger Chianti Classicos. And along with those, we thought we had to create a chain of crus, of wines coming from most of the interesting areas of Tuscany, and as you know, there is quite a few of these. So we purchased in 2001, 2002 a property in Montalcino called La Fuga. We started to make Brunello there. Then we bought land in Bolgheri and created in the between 2000 and 2001 this property called Campo al Mare, where we make the Bolgheri DOC, and we also make a Vermentino there. So we planted the vineyards and everything. And then we bought land in Maremma, which is south coastal area of Tuscany, near Grosseto, and created a winery there too with its own wines. So our idea was, if you come to Tuscany, you come to me and my father, family-owned business, small because just me and him. and we own properties that make wines in all these areas.
In every great viticultural
Can
area.
be, yeah, it can be traditional like Chianti Classico, Brunello, or Nobile, or can be more modern like Bolgheri or the Super Toscans.
Sure.
So we get a little bit of all, and the most important thing is that in all these places we have our own vineyards, we grow our own grapes. So that's also something that helps to make the wines even more distinctive.
It's a pretty ambitious plan for two guys, for you and your dad.
And for these times being.
Sure,
right?
sure, of course. Well,
Yeah,
it's good. It's good and bad. So let's talk a little bit about the wines. Nozzole, Chianti Classico. What's the style, the house style?
Well, in this case, the Chianti Classico Riserva Nozzole, this is a wine that we've been selling for a long time. It's probably one of our major wine, most important wine, definitely, and it's very, very important, especially for this country. The wine has been established
in the market for a long time. I remember 1980s.
We changed, yes, but we changed the style also too a little bit. That means the wine is no longer like the Chianti Classico that was in the fiascos in the 60s or 70s. That means it's made entirely with Sangiovese today. So we don't use Canaiolo, which is the other red, and the two whites that were used back then, because until then Chiantis, yes, exactly, were made 20% with white varieties, which you might think doesn't make sense, but the reason why is because the wines were much lighter, and that helped to make the wine more drinkable at the time. And also the Trebbiano, the yield, I mean, you see these big bunches, that helped a lot.
Farmers were happy.
So that changed. We did a much better selection of the vines in the vineyards. We replanted vineyards since then. Most of them have been replanted with much higher quality clones, because these days we are looking at the right clones to make the quality. Back until the early 80s, we didn't have clonal selection on Sangiovese, and most of the vineyards were planted and raised, so the trellis system and everything, mostly for the production, for the quantity. And you know that quantity and quality usually don't get along very well.
Usually they don't.
That we've been doing a lot of changes in that, but although we are allowed to use international varieties or other varieties in the blend with him up to 20%, we are not doing that because we want to keep this more related to the traditions. So this wine here is 100% Sangiovese. So compared to 30 years ago, grapes are more mature, more uniform, a lot more concentration, more extraction, more complex, more interesting wine, definitely more interesting wine, but Sangiovese, only Sangiovese in this case.
What about the wood treatment here? Wood
treatment here is traditional. We have larger casks. New, because you have to know that it's very important that the oak, whether it's traditional or not, you have to change it every once in a while. I mean, the traditional oak cask you can go in and shave every 4 or 5 years to get rid of that tartrate, those crystals that build up, and the first layer of the oak, in order to allow the oak to interact with the wine again and do the reaction of aging with the wine. But after 10, 12 years, I mean, they might be good to put a jacuzzi, to make a jacuzzi, to put flowers in it. But even if they were made better in the 50s than they are now, you have to change. So unfortunately, that operation costs a lot of money, but it's worth it for the wine. So when you say new oak, but large.
So you say new, are you changing? It's not 100% new.
Never. It's because you always have a rotation.
20,
so
30, 40.
Depends. In the small oak, that means the barriques or the tonneau, which are the ones we use for the more modern wines, like these two, for example. You have a rotation, and since you change some every year, because they don't last as long, they last usually 5 years. Usually you have about 20% new every year, and then you rotate. With these, it's different. Since these last a little longer, maybe after 10, 12 years, you end up changing 50% of them. So the changes are a little more, not every year.
They're not as consistent.
No, exactly.
A little bit more abrupt.
Yes.
But I just wanted to clarify that when you said new oak, this is not 100% new oak every year.
No, never.
It's a classic style.